I had another guy on, a friend of mine, and he would, I'd tell him at the start, I'd be like, just as close as you can to the mic would be great. And like he'll be talking and he'll just sort of go
fade away.
It's like, come back, man, come back. We need you here.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I won't do that.
But no, don't stress if you
I
need
try
to
not
move.
to do that. I think about if I'm singing.
What do you mean?
Because with a microphone, when you're singing, you're meant to be close to it.
Yes, right. And that's
Unless
typically a dynamic one, isn't it? So you have to...
Yeah.
Do you find you end up like eating it? Like touching it too much? I see that happen. So many people performing live, they're constantly like touching it.
And it's gross. It's so gross because this is going to sound really gross, but it's wet.
Yeah.
Because obviously when you sing or when you speak, and then it's actually quite funny when you're performing because if you touch it and it's like, ugh. And a thought goes through your mind of like, oh my gosh, so many people have used this microphone and you don't know what you've touched, and it's very, very gross. Yeah,
that is really gross, especially with live performances, because most of the time, like depending on who's playing, people are usually projecting their voice quite hard, which usually involves saliva in some way, shape or form.
Sweat.
I wouldn't be surprised if they're not going to clean them down, are they?
No.
I suppose, because like those mics, they're going to have like.
Yeah, I don't really know how they clean
them.
the
They're going
mics.
to have that mesh
in
there. Yeah, I can't imagine they're super waterproof or anything.
No, I don't reckon.
And especially if you're doing like a gig where you've got a lineup of people and you're playing like after a couple of others, and it's like,
oh,
gross.
Home audio entertainment.
9016 Radio.
The show for artists of all kinds.
Sit down and relax. Enjoy the music.
I went to the dentist this morning. How do you feel about the dentist?
How do I feel about the dentist? I like the dentist.
I like the dentist too.
People don't like the dentist.
I feel like a lot of people don't like the dentist, I don't know why. I feel like it's the nitty gritty shaping of the teeth and
feeling around.
Feels gross, But I liked it, and I think I'm pretty good at looking after my teeth. So he was like, "No, you're all good."
Same.
It's just a great experience, and especially when the dentist is nice too.
Yeah.
Like anyone in health work that's nice to you makes it all more better. But I love going to the dentist. I feel
like
crisp and clean.
I feel like people don't like it because they're too scared.
Yeah, well,
they're like,
people,
oh shit, have I like not?
I guess most people that are scared of the dentist are people that probably don't like look after their teeth. Whereas I'm
but
like,
that's only because
they
they haven't gone for a while.
Yeah, exactly, that too. But that's it's expensive to go to the dentist too.
It's so expensive to go.
It's like, the appointment's made for you. You don't want to have to spend the money on it. It's sort of like you're forced into paying this bill for something that you do need, but you're not prepared for. And it's just like...
You kind of don't need. It's like it's a checkup usually when you go,
exactly.
when they say 6 months or 12 months or whatever. And it's like, I'm paying this much to go and sit them for me to tell me my teeth are fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
and same with doctor's appointment as well. Like if you go to the doctor for something and they basically go, oh yeah, well that usually happens because of this. So just give it a week or just have a such and such and you'll be right. It's like, oh, okay, $50.
And you're
for them
like,
to tell
why?
me that. It's like, why did I waste my time doing this? But
to be fair, I've had some really great experiences at the doctors recently.
That's good. That's what you want. I've heard the polar opposite from a lot of people, which is really sad to hear.
Really?
I guess just certain, I mean, I don't have any names to drop, not that I would anyway, but I feel like a lot of people, their GPs aren't, all that they feel like they need to be, or have experiences like that where they go there and they don't get the advice that they thought they were going to get or, get sort of, I've heard so many stories about people getting sent around different places, like, oh, we'll refer you to this person and that person, and sort of never getting any results. And I go, okay, that's extremely frustrating, especially for something of your own health that you want to get sorted, But
I had a terrible experience last year, though. Yeah. I had this weird lump on my leg, and I was like, this is kind of odd. Like, it just came out of nowhere.
Lumps are scary.
Yeah, but the thing, I didn't really think about that. And I went to my doctor, and she was like, okay, like, we'll book you an appointment. And I think it was like just at the labs to get a test done. And then when I got there, the woman was like, yep, so we had to test cancer. And I was like, wait, what? Like peak exam season. I'm stressed out of my mind. And I was just like, I didn't think it was going to be like that. I thought maybe it was just something else. And it freaked the flip out of me. Wow. But I was obviously fine. But
I suppose though, that's already like in the back of your mind if you're going to to a doctor about a lump though. Like,
But I didn't even think about it. It didn't occur to me
right.
at all.
It was just something that's different.
I had other things on my mind.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
exam season, you're
Yeah.
going to be crazy. But yeah, I freak out about stuff like that. I'm constantly looking at my body, like if I notice something new or just like, oh, that's slightly different, I'm like, do I need to be too worried about this?
Yeah.
Should I go check it out? Because again, it'll be like if I'm like, oh my God, I've got a lump on my arm or a new spot on my arm, and I
Yeah.
go to the doctor and I'll be like,
You're an
what
idiot.
is this? They'll be like, oh, that's normal. People get those all the
Yeah.
time. You're like, okay, well, now I've just wasted $50 for you to tell me.
Yeah.
But I suppose it's part of it, isn't it? Mm-hmm. All right. How have you been, Judah?
I've been really good. Finally finished studying, which is like a huge relief because it's been
Cool.
4 years.
That's what were you studying?
Oceanography.
Whoa.
Do you know what that is?
I do not, but I've heard the name before, or I've never actually heard of anyone that studies it
Yeah.
before.
So it's like the physics of the ocean,
Whoa.
which is really interesting.
Yeah,
and
I can
cool.
imagine.
But it was like a really long 4 years.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in. So is that purely just the ocean, or is that involve like sea life as well? Like what in particular is it, like the physics of?
So specifically, the area that I went into was more looking at the physics and dynamics of the ocean, where we did learn about the biology and the chemical processes as well.
Yeah.
But and how they kind of all connect, which was interesting. So we kind of had a broad view over the whole topic and all the areas that you could potentially go into. But in our final year, we kind of just specified our interests and our skills set, I guess, in terms of
Sure.
where we want to go with it.
So what's your direction with it? What are you wanting to get out of it?
So,
Or why do you like it, I suppose, is probably a
yeah,
bit.
I went into it. I chose to study it. Basically, it was like one of those moments I didn't know what to do, and I was like, oh, stuff it. I like sharks and whales. I'll just study them. And then oceanography seemed to be the best thing. And then halfway through, and I wasn't interested in the physics. And then halfway through the year, I was like drawing a diagram, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so satisfying.
Wow, that's
And,
crazy. That's the beauty of study, right? Is like you
Yeah.
can go into something with an idea of what you already think you're going to get into, and then turns out there's something else within
yeah.
that you find like that's like the perfect outcome, I suppose.
Yeah, it's the biggest luxury, I think.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, in terms of where I'm going to go with it, that really just depends on this year. This
Sure.
year is kind of my year off with
Yeah,
that,
right.
with science, and just to do music. And
Awesome.
then at the end of the year, recap and see what I've enjoyed and if I go into more study next year.
Awesome. So does the music trump that, or do you sort of have like a safety net, or is like, what is, I guess, your dream between the two? Are you like, would you really want to put in more time and effort into the music to make that succeed, or do you want to stick with sort of the safe path, I suppose? Do you think it is a safe path, like oceanography?
I think it's 100% a safe path.
Because what can that sort of lead into?
First, it's definitely a safe path. I always never thought of music as a career growing up, and I always did it for more enjoyment. And it really was a different force of other people's voices that kind of encouraged me to pursue it, because people wanted to listen.
Sure.
But I wanted to finish my degree. And it's definitely a huge passion of mine. They're like the same level of passion. And that's why this year I'm giving myself time to go 100% with music, like 100%, fingers crossed, 100% with music, push it as much as I can, and then at the end of the year, recap if I've enjoyed it.
Cool. So I suppose what to you is working hard with music? Like, what are you going to change that you weren't doing before? Like, what are you going to implement to sort of, I guess, dive as deep as you can into music? Like, what has sort of been your musical, I suppose, last year when you were studying, or when you were studying, what were you doing musically, or were you was it just time you were limited by to really get into it, or?
Yeah, time and being uneducated in music
Right.
was a big thing for me. I did music papers throughout uni as interest, just to keep it there, keep developing. But I guess I just didn't know what it actually required.
Right.
Yes, I like to write songs and I like to sing and play music, but it's kind of a different playing field when you want to make it a career.
Right.
Or just, pursue it in a way where you can
It's a bit more serious.
It's a lot more serious.
Yeah.
And I guess I wasn't ready for that. I kind of just enjoyed doing the odd gigs every now and
Right.
again and writing in my own time. But last year was quite big for me because I did record a few songs and got under the way with that side of things. So that was quite a big step for me in that area.
Cool. So, okay, so where does it all begin for you? Like, where did you get into music? Have you always sort of had a knack for singing? Like, have you sort of done that your whole life, or was there something that sort of sparked when you were younger that got you into music?
Yeah.
Like, where does it all start for
Well,
you?
I was brought up in a Christian family, which is musical. They just lead worship a lot of the time. So I was brought up in that environment, just music all the time, day in, day out. But I wasn't a very good singer.
Right.
Fun fact. I was
Interesting. I don't believe that.
I know. I was a terrible singer. And I was relatively competitive when I was younger. And my sister, who's a few months older than I, was much better at singing than I was.
Right.
So when I was younger, I kind of wanted to be better.
Well, that's a really good thing to help you learn. If there's something you sort of have almost a resentment, like an anger towards something, you need to be better.
Especially when you're young as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Like you just
Sibling
wanna,
rivalry.
Yeah. And it kind of just, I just wanted to sing. I loved it. I've always loved it. But, and, you know, I don't know, it kind of came from that. And it's just over time progressed through school doing musicals and choirs and different things like that. And then obviously over the last few years doing some gigs, it's been pretty cool.
That's crazy. So you really had to train your voice to get it to what it is.
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah.
I believe that you can teach yourself, like you can be taught how to sing better. But do you think like anyone can sing, or do you think that people are definitely more gifted than others? Because like off the bat, there will be people that can sing naturally.
Yeah.
But do you think that anyone can sort of teach themselves how to like sing properly, like through what you've experienced?
Well, I don't like those questions because technically everyone can sing and you
Yeah.
don't want to be judgmental. But it depends what route you go down, because I know so many girls that have gone and guys that have gone to singing lessons and they can sing, you know, and they won't have a natural ability for it, but then they can sing. It depends, because tone comes with natural ability. Like it took me a long time to get tone. I used to just sing a lot and yell a lot, and it was really not great. But I do think that if you are someone that does have a natural ability or have just grown up singing or listening to people singing, you usually will be able to be someone who can actually have a good voice when you're older.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I suppose it is you're not so much learning learning singing, but you're learning music, right? You're learning keys and what fits into, I suppose, a key and how to actually manipulate a voice. Would that be true?
So I've never been taught how to sing, so I don't know.
Right. So yours is purely just like to your own ear. You're sort of training your voice to, right? And is it like breathing techniques that you're teaching yourself to as well, like to be able to sing for longer too?
Yeah. So with that, I was thankful to have my dad. He's a great teacher with the breathing techniques.
Yeah.
He'd get very angry at me if I didn't breathe properly.
Oh, that's crazy.
Which is so funny. But yeah. So I definitely learnt by just listening to people. Like I would become.
And you obviously then have a good ear for just what sounds right anyway.
Yeah, it's kind of just like mimicking what you're hearing and try to sound like as much as you can. I used to have earphones in and I'd be singing in the bathroom, I don't know, like Alicia Keys or something.
Classic.
Just belting out.
Yeah.
And I would think that I sound exactly like her. Obviously you don't.
Yeah.
But I would think I sounded exactly like her, and I was so confident with that. And maybe that's why I ended up being able to.
That's so crazy because like I feel, even though you can sound so good to yourself, but if you're a wee bit tone deaf, you might not know if you're actually
that's
off, you know?
a bit different though, isn't it?
Do you reckon?
Maybe.
I don't know anything about it. I'm just sort of assuming because I feel like, you know, you could feel like you sing really well, and especially in somewhere like the shower, you know, when you've got the natural reverb and everything, you think you sound great. And there's been times where I've like sung a certain song and be like, oh wow, that fits my voice really well.
Yeah.
And like tried to record something and then be like, oh my God, that's like awful.
Yeah.
So I wonder sometimes whether I'm actually sounding good at the time that I'm like making a sound, you know?
I think it's usually when people are going flat, because you can sound like you're on like the same note, but if you take away the music, it'll have this weird tone to it, and it's just singing flat. Yeah.
Interesting. So yeah, that's stuff that I don't know about actually like how to, what it's all called and what it's all meant to be a part of. That's so crazy.
To be honest, I don't really know either.
But I mean, like,
I think that's kind of the enjoyment of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I suppose,
For me anyway.
Yeah,
Just being able
definitely. definitely. So can you play instruments as well? You can play a bit of the keys, can't you?
Yeah.
So is that what you were studying when you were doing that?
No, I've never studied an instrument.
Right. So what were you doing when you said you studied music for a wee bit?
So I did there's these performance papers at uni that they offer each year, and I just did those. And you just spend half an hour a week with someone, show them your work. You have a couple of technicals where you just do some vocal techniques to show that you understand what you're meant to be doing, and then also you have a performance and you have to write 3 songs, which was great for kind of motivating me.
Sure. Yeah, because there's some logistics, I suppose, that come through, if you're wanting to become a musician, right? There's the argument to be made that music has no rules, right? You can sort of approach it any way, shape or form, and you can really do whatever you want, especially these days with the tools that you have available. You can really do whatever you want. But there's a lot of theory that still comes into it, right? There's still a lot of things. There's still a reason why something might not sound the way you want it to. If you're trying to get something sort of perfect, you do have to sort of follow some sort of guideline, right?
Yeah.
Especially to be in key. But that being said, that's not necessarily a rule. I suppose you can really sort of go out of that if you can do it properly, but there's still a lot of logistics to be learned. I can imagine there's a lot of that has still sort of played into how you've progressed through music, whether you've studied it or not, right? Yeah,
definitely. I guess when we're listening to music, if you're listening to music, sometimes, I don't know if you can, but you may be able to already hear what's coming next, because music is such a versatile thing and we can listen to it 24/7. We kind of get an idea of the pattern that music plays in. Although you've got these different songs, they all kind of follow a similar structure.
Sure.
So, sometimes we'll be playing a song and I haven't heard it before, but I'll just be able to jump on and get the melody because you can kind of just jump along the keys.
Sure.
And that's just through repetition of listening to different music.
Definitely, yeah, that makes sense. And I suppose if you were to take that element and then translate that to paper, you would see that there were only a certain amount of notes that you could hit within that key anyway.
Yeah.
So to just sort of know where you're at, it's pretty easy to just go, okay, now I need to jump to an A. Do you know when you're singing, do you think you know what notes you're, can you recognize a note when you hear it?
Say what note it is? So
Yeah,
if
someone said, can you sing an A? Could you sing an A?
No.
Yeah, that's
Definitely
crazy
not.
to me.
That blows my mind when people do that. I'm utterly impressed when people do that.
Honestly, it's insane. Anyone that I know that can play an instrument, it's typically a guitar, and someone will play a note, or I've had a friend teach me how to play a chord while they're sort of not looking to play something, they'll be like, no, and then play something else. And
wow.
Yep, that's it. It's what? How do you even recognize that? Because I suppose if they're teaching you finger positions or stuff, they know what it's going to sound like. But to be able to just on the spot be like, right, play this.
That's crazy. I find pianists are the same though.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I suppose with that though, slightly different from the voice, because you've got, if you've got keys in front of you, you literally know then and there which chord or key that's going to be, right? But with your voice, to be able to get a pitch perfect note out, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's really hard.
I'd be super impressed by anyone who could do that.
I'm just, that actually blows my mind.
I can't imagine how it would really be used in sort of a practical sense. Because again, like you say, if you're jumping in on a song or a beat or something, or in a group, you've sort of already got the tone there, so it's easy to match something.
Yeah, definitely.
Off the bat, that's
if someone
crazy.
just told me to sing C or G, I'd have no idea what to do.
That's crazy. That's so crazy.
Yeah.
I feel like though anyone has the ear to recognise when something is out of key. So I feel like even if you can't sing something to the best of your ability, you could still hear something. You could still know what you want to sing or where you're going to sing it.
Where you want to go,
And you'd know straight away. If I pulled up my computer and laid something out and 90% of it was in key, and then at the very end put something out of key, anyone would be able to pick that up.
Yeah.
And I guess that's sort of just a natural tool that we have to be able to recognise when something is not right.
Not right. Yeah.
It's just when you're physically trying to project that sound that becomes quite tricky. And that's, I guess, where you need training to be able to sort of manipulate your voice where it can hit. You're not.
I also find that on off days when my voice isn't going that great.
Right.
It really sucks. And you have this idea and you just can't get it. Like, you know where you want to go, but you just can't make it there. And
Right.
it just sounds so awful. But you're just like, maybe I'll just try it another day.
Yeah, right.
You know?
So your vocal patterns, I guess, I suppose you don't really know what's happening when it's an off day for you. Like, if you can't hit a certain note, you don't really know why. Like, is it if you just got like a cold that day
I
or
think you
something?
do.
You know, that's crazy.
Yeah. I think sometimes, I don't know, I feel like I can feel when I have an off day. And it depends, I think. It depends if sometimes I feel short of breath. And as a singer, that's one of the most awful things you can
Right.
have, because you have to breathe properly.
Yeah.
Or like if I'm tightening up heaps in my neck, it just doesn't, you can't do any of the big notes or,
Right.
you know.
Are you super aware of that when you're recording and you're listening back, like where you take gasps and things?
Yeah. Actually,
Does that eat
yeah.
away? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I had, for one of my songs, I'm not sure when it's going to come out, probably one of the later ones. So I won't say what one it is. I don't want anyone to know.
Still, so anonymous song.
Anonymous song. The first verse, I had to sing a line each because I just couldn't breathe.
Couldn't do it all at once.
No, I just couldn't do it all at once. I just ran out of breath and it just went flat, and I just couldn't say the words.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Does that get you a bit worried when you do have to do that in the end when you're recording, when you have to like perform it live?
No.
It doesn't worry you? Because
No.
do you just, I guess, train yourself to be able to sing it? Or
Yeah, I think when I recorded, I was only there for a week and doing 4 songs. It was really intense. It was really intense, actually. And by the end of the week, when I did this song, I was so exhausted. And I was just like, I don't know, I could just even hear it. We recorded the song so many times, like, just because it took so long to get a full sound, because I was just so shattered and I was just so tired of singing.
Sure.
But with performing, I've performed a lot, and I can kind of feel how my voice will sound. And for some reason, when I'm performing, I actually do better techniques like breathing
Yeah, right.
a lot better.
So, like during the performance or before the performance?
Before the performance. No,
Right.
sorry, during the
Yeah,
performance.
okay.
Yeah.
So you find when you come into a live performance, it's easier to actually sing sometimes than in the studio?
Yeah.
That's interesting. That just reminds me of something that I saw recently. There was a study done on athletes, specifically athletes that ran track or cycled, that actually 30% of the muscle's potential was lost when it was stretched beforehand rather than going in fresh.
Oh, really?
And I thought that was really interesting because that would actually kind of make a lot of sense, because in my experience with athletics, I found the times that when it came down to an actual race, when I knew it was like a competition, or it was, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you
It
mean.
was all on the line sort of thing. Then I would prep so much more beforehand. I would make sure I went for big runs and
Yeah.
stretched everything, and then sort of never felt like I did any better than I could
Yeah.
have. Whereas if I just ran races at the club on like a Monday night, like we would on a weekly basis, I find it felt great to run without really doing much beforehand. So I
Interesting.
wonder if that translates to
Music.
throat muscles, I suppose, vocal cords, because that's sort of what it sounds like. You might just go, okay, right, we're playing live. Boom,
Yeah.
you're sort of ready to go. It's sort of rested rather
Yeah.
than exhausted a bit, because I can imagine a whole day, like sometimes I can barely get through singing one song in the car, let alone like recording the song over
Yeah.
and over and over.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting. It's an interesting concept. I do definitely understand with the athletes completely. I sometimes think it's a mindset. Sometimes if you
Sure.
sing too much or you prepare too much, you get yourself stuck in this expectation.
Yeah, right.
And so, like, even if you do, it's different obviously with athletics, because that's a very physical
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
But like, sometimes if you get yourself into a mindset of an expectation of how something should go because you've prepared for it, you've thought about it, so it should go well,
Right.
often that's when you have your worst performances and you feel shit afterwards.
Yeah, interesting. I don't know how. I've never had the experience of performing live, and obviously, well, I don't know if I can say I can't sing after what we've talked about. I wonder really what I would be like in that environment, because I feel like with singing, it's kind of I don't know, you'll be able to tell yes or no to this, but I feel like, yeah, I don't know how I feel about that, because I'm trying to translate what I sort of do to what you do, and in terms of like being in the right mindset. I feel like it's hard to really gauge whether something actually works or not through what mental state you're in. What am I trying to say? I can't put this fluidly. To put that into physical practice, something that is done physically, that can be affected by your mental state, is something that is crazy to me, and I do believe in and have experienced it before. But to be able to sort of control when that happens, do you find that like when you're on stage you are in the right mindset sort of automatically, or do you have to think sort of a certain way before you go on, or tell yourself that it's not as bad as it's going to be? Like what is your experience playing live? Like how many times do you think you've actually performed live, and can you sort of compare experiences?
I'm really not sure how many times I've performed live, because it's been
Enough times?
Well, I think my first live performance was when I was like 12 and it was like a worship song in the town hall.
Yeah, right.
And that's completely different.
And was it just you up there?
Yeah, and then some other people came on. It was so random.
Oh,
it was really
that's
cool,
crazy.
but it was crazy.
Yeah.
But I definitely know when, like, I can pull distinction between a time where I've just felt like I absolutely killed it, and then a time where I was just like, there was nothing in me mentally to be able to push that through and give a good performance. I was in Queenstown and I did a performance at Yonder, and I was like, thought I was like set for it. I was like, okay, I'm prepared. And then I go to my friend, I'm like, oh, like I've got a really weird feeling, and I just wasn't in the right mindset, and I just couldn't snap out of it. And I did the performance, and it was like super marginal. It was awful. I was like, I don't ever want to perform again. There's no point. Yeah. And it was just, I guess, like, if you can recognize those mindsets that you're in, you kind of have to create a way of, how can I get out of this?
Yeah.
You know, because the thing, at the end of the day, people are watching you. And
you
obviously,
can't just pull out, can you?
No, you can't pull out. And you have to really, if you want it to, if it's something you love and you want it to be good and you want to enjoy it, you have to pull yourself out of those mindsets, because it can completely change the way it goes.
Right. So from that experience, has that come up again for you? Have you had sort of a weird feeling before you've gone on stage before? And not necessarily with yourself, because you've performed a bit with Juno in her group. Is that a whole different thing altogether?
Performing with Juno is a completely different feeling. It's so much fun and so nice. And yeah, I think that actually that explains it quite well. When I'm quite stressed, when I've got like a lot going on and I feel like that I'm not organised for a performance, I will usually have quite a bad mindset going into it. I won't really have enough energy, and feel quite flustered as well. Whereas, like, say, with Juno because I just sing and I do a bit of tambo and have a wee boogie, and it's really fun, and I know what's coming, I know what to do.
And I suppose the light is more on.
Well, it's exactly.
Her, really, isn't it?
It's her show, and I can just chill out. There's no stress. There's no expectation.
That's great.
And I really enjoy it.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And the best part about having a band, right, is just being part of a group. Because I was saying on the last episode that it's just so much better creatively to be with other people than it is to do it by yourself. Like, granted, there's most of the time when you're creating something, you want to be by yourself. But if you've got no one to really share that with, it just doesn't make it as exciting, you know.
Yeah.
So it would make sense that in that environment with Juno is that
it's awesome.
You're much more comfortable.
It's really great, actually.
That's so
I
cool.
really enjoy it.
Did she come to you?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Which is pretty cool.
So you do keys, right?
No,
A
that's
wee bit.
Mia. So there's like a couple of us that kind of rotate in and out for her.
Okay, yeah, sure.
It depends kind of who's available and what's going on, and because obviously Mia's an awesome musician as well, so is Phoebe. We all kind of do our own solo stuff, so it really just depends who's available, I guess. Don't quote me.
Have you guys sort of done work behind the scenes with each other on your own personal stuff, like collaboration-wise sort of thing?
No,
so you're all
not
going
yet.
out on your own. That's pretty cool.
Which is cool. I mean, it's always something that like you can do potentially. Yeah.
And nice to know, I guess, that you have each other there if you did want some other sort of input, you know.
Yeah, it's the biggest support system. It's amazing. And we're all so different. That's what I love. We all have such different music.
Yeah, that's sick.
And there's no I just love it. It's amazing.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so, and yeah, again, to my point, just so good to have other people around that you can feed off, you know, people that have different ideas, different approaches that you can sort of take from. And most people are willing to sort of like share ideas and things as well and chip in, especially if you're close friends, you know, to be able to offer ideas on something where you can take something, because it's so easy to have a quote unquote writer's block with anything creatively, and you need people to be able to sort of get you out of that.
Yeah, like we jumpstart.
You know? Yeah. Do you have any sort of tips of your own? Do you ever come to that point with music, or like, because this year obviously is going to be a year for you to really dive into it. I'm sure you're going to come across these things and have come across these things before. Do you have any ways to sort of get yourself out of it? Do you just take it day by day and just think, okay, this isn't happening today, come back tomorrow? Or do you try and fight through it? Do you find that you get more results if you sort of push and push?
Is this with songwriting?
Yeah.
Yeah. Songwriting's an interesting one for me because I feel like I do it maybe slightly different to most people. There's never an intention to write about something, if that makes sense.
So you don't have a subject matter at hand when you're going into something?
No.
Right. That is interesting.
Yeah, and I actually tried to do that. I tried to have a subject, and it was the worst thing I've ever written. It was horrible.
Yeah, I can understand that, because if you already have an idea about something and you're trying to put that idea out and it's not quite right, you can lose concept of that altogether. You know, you completely forgot what you really started off doing.
You can kind of end up in this like loop of trying to just figure out what words fit rather than actually just letting it come out.
Sure.
So for me, like, my thing is just improvisation. So I'll just play something on the guitar or keyboard, or my brother will play something and I'll just start singing along, and then just let words, whatever comes out, comes out. But I obviously, when I'm doing that, I'm trying to think on the spot of like what comes next, and I'll always have a recorder out because I may sing something that's really good, or I may make up a really cool lyric.
Even if it's just your phone there.
Even if it's just your phone.
Record something.
Exactly. And if I don't, I'll forget it, of course. And
they're usually the best ideas, the one you forget.
The best ideas. It really sucks a lot. But yeah, with the block though, I think that's quite a hard one, because that usually, for me anyway, is more about where I am mentally and emotionally in terms of what's going on in my life, or is it an escape, or am I actually cleared of like, can I just do this and actually feel whatever I'm singing? And I definitely think the best advice for that is just to take time. Just like, don't rush it.
Time heals all.
Yeah. And it's like, all good. Like, don't stress.
Yeah, for sure.
Like,
and then that'll be great for you this year with a bit more time on your hands to be able to go, oh, I can do this tomorrow. Not, it'll have to be next week, so I've got to study again this week. You know, you've got full sort of creative outlet, which is going to be super handy. I think you'll really discover how it all is going to work for you.
I'm so nervous. Yeah. Like,
but it's good though. I'm sure it's a good nervous, because like,
it is.
To have time is what anyone wants, really, to get what they want done.
I don't know. I've like written a lot of songs over the last year. Just obviously with COVID and everything, I just kind of had a bit more time. And I love all of them. And I'm nervous about like continuing to write more and then being like, oh, I just have like all this stuff and I don't know what to do with it. And having to like kind of decipher through it and choose out what, I don't know, I want to release and that type of stuff.
And it might be that you end up sort of dabbling in everything anyway to sort of figure out where it goes. You might find the ones that you didn't think were going to be the best ones actually do end up being better than you thought. You never know how.
I'm holding on to that.
Yeah, for sure. But also at the same time, you sort of have to let go of your expectations, because I think that's probably one of the biggest things, at least if I can relate in any way to painting. I think if I have too much expectation, then I have more disappointment built up in it, you know, because just like I was saying before, like if you already have an idea of what you're trying to create and you just can't quite get it, that's going to be all the more frustrating than trying to make something just sort of off the bat, you know, because that's usually the more exciting part for me. Like the thing I was so drawn to about painting and the style of painting that I do is that I don't know what it's going to be in the end. Like the only concept of what I know it's going to end up looking like is just the colours that I have on the palette at the time, and there's usually a figure involved. So that's really all I have to work with. So what ends up happening is just what it is, and that's the only way I can get you know, enjoyment out of it. Because if I said to myself, okay, today I'm going to paint this forest, and I've got a picture of the forest there or something, and I can't paint that forest the way I want, that's going to eat at me for ages. So I'd much rather just throw things around and see
Slap some
where they
green
land.
on it.
Yeah, literally.
Some brown.
And that's just so much more exciting. And I wonder if there's sort of a way to translate to music, because, I mean, I'm sure there's sort of a way you can do it.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's so weird that you kind of brought up the expectation and disappointment thing so strongly, because it was just the other day when I was just drawing something.
Yeah.
I've got oil pastels and I'm just having fun with them. But I was looking at something and I was drawing it, and it was a face, and I was just like, I looked at it afterwards, I was like, this looks nothing like that. But I was like, wow, there's such a beauty in that though. Like, I really love this. And I ended up writing a wee thing just about how if we walk our path, I don't even remember I wish I remembered what it was off the top of my head.
Is that the quote that's in your bio?
No.
Because I read that before and I was like, that sounded similar to what you were saying.
No, but I love that so much. I think it's going to stay there. It's been there for years. I think it's going to stay there.
It's a good one.
No, this one was written by me, but I don't remember it off the top of my head. It was pretty much talking about expectations, how we'll lead a life of disappointment. And I don't know, missing a lot of the beauty and all that type of stuff. Because I think that's the same thing with art, with painting, with music, through drawing, anything really, any expression. When you're learning something, you expect it to be a certain way and you forget to admire what you've accomplished. And with songwriting, it's the same thing. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I want to have this super moody song. I want to be deep, or I want to be cryptic or something like that, you know. And then it ends up the same thing. I'm just filled with disappointment. I'm like, oh, let's just scrap that and go in the bin.
Yeah.
Whereas,
that's crazy.
So learning to let go has been the biggest change for the last year.
Yeah, it's a really hard thing to do. And especially if because you can definitely still have an idea that you want to achieve. And most people sort of set out to achieve things that they've envisioned, and definitely through study and things like that as well. You do sort of have to come to an end of a project of some description. And through that you can sort of, find different ways, I guess, to approach. I sort of lost track of what I was saying there. But anyway, I translated a lot of that concept to life as well. And it can sound really stupid, but I've never studied, I've never really had a career path in mind, and because I feel like that's a similar sort of thing where you have an expectation of how your life's going to turn out, and it just never does. There's always things that come a different way, and just like you with your studying, where you've gone in thinking you were going to learn and love this one thing, and you've discovered something else completely within that, and that is life really. That's how things come in and out of your life. It's crazy.
That's the beauty of it, I think.
Definitely. That's so cool. I mean, I think if I can, the only experience I have in music is making beats on my laptop. But what you were saying before, I could relate to, because if I go into the program and I want to make a moody song, it's going to end up semi-moody. But it's not going to be what I had thought out at the time. So I found that the only beats that I make that I really like are the ones that I have just found a sample first. And just sort of made whatever sounds right to fit to it.
Manipulated it a wee bit.
And then again, you're sort of surprised with yourself because you've come up with something. So I suppose you can relate to that in some sort of way.
Yeah, it's definitely a chuffed feeling.
Yeah, it's so cool. So I'm very interested, you were saying before about how when your creative process or your writing process, you don't have a subject matter in mind, you're going in pretty fresh with everything. Yeah. So do you still start with the lyrics, or do you always have some sort of instrumentation there to work by? And also, when you do start writing the lyrics, if you haven't had a subject matter in hand, does it still become a story, or does it just end up becoming a lot of this? Because I know there's a part of lyric writing where you sort of have what do they call it, an artistic license to sort of just
not make sense.
Yeah, well, not necessarily not make sense, but perhaps just it was sounding okay, but you just can't quite think of the right line, so you just sort of say something else that's still in the broad context of what you're trying to do, but it's not quite. So does it end up a lot like that for you?
For me, a little bit sometimes, but that usually happens when I'm just improvising, and that's why I'll end up saying something, and I'm like, usually my facial expression shows it. I'm like, that didn't really make sense, but oh, well, we'll get away with it. Yeah. Wait, there's so many questions in that.
Yeah, sorry.
No,
That's
it's
a long
okay.
one.
I'm just trying to like backtrack.
Yeah.
I first off with the starting, I start with melody usually. I just sing a tune or something will be like a one-liner, just a one-liner, and I'll sing it in the car, and then I'll go back to it because I'm like, oh, that was actually really cool. Like it would be a cool hook. And then with the songwriting, once I have like a foundation, so improvisation is my foundation. It kind of gives me an idea about where the song can go, what the song's about, like kind of roughly, because obviously you can manipulate it with different words that you choose to use. And kind of just, it always ends up as a story. There's always a story to it. There's always something that it's projecting, that it's wanting to get out. Whether the process and the journey of getting from like the improvisation to the final song, that kind of varies depending on like what the song is representing, in terms of like, if I can't personally connect with something I'm writing and it's still like a good song, that song sometimes takes a lot longer to actually get anywhere. Because sometimes when you improvise, you gain meaning from that, and then you kind of follow that path. Whereas if I've done like an improvisation and I'm like, oh, that hits real deep, you kind of, you follow it, but you follow it in a way, it's really hard to describe, because it's not just like trying to make up words, it's trying to feel what's right to say.
Right.
And kind of what story you want to tell, if it wants to be blatant or if it wants to be kind of something someone has to decipher. So it's kind of, the choosing an intention for a song's always been difficult, even after I've written some songs sometimes.
That's so interesting.
I know, dude.
You have a really deep insight into the process and everything. That's quite...
Sometimes after, it actually pains me sometimes. Sometimes I'll write a song and I'm like, that has no relation to me. Like, you know, but it's a sad or something. Often my songs are about love or a broken relationship or something. And I'm like, that has nothing to do with me. Like, you know, but it's an observation of people and relationships, because love is an interesting thing, and the way people love.
Sure.
So interesting.
And
so
very similar too, and why people relate to love songs so much, because pretty much everyone's been through the same stuff.
And it's like, it's fascinating, but that's like a whole nother topic. But with the, so, you know, I'll have a song and it doesn't really relate to me. And then 3 months later, I'll be singing it and I'll be like, oh shit. I'll be like, no.
That's so
and then
crazy.
it will click and I'm like, I get it. So almost sometimes you manifest not what's happened, but like, I feel like sometimes people don't process things straight away or at the time of it happening, and then they'll write something, well, me personally, write something, and then a few months later, I'll be like, oh my gosh, I get it now.
Right.
Like, it is something that I had to process through.
Keep hitting the mic.
Yeah, it's going real great.
Okay, yeah, well, that's interesting, because I feel like if I was trying to write about something that was personal to me, like I wouldn't actually be able to get the story out, or at least wouldn't, you know, I struggle with actually sort of accepting things, especially with lyrics and words, what I've actually written, to make it not sound like corny or cheesy, because I see that a lot, or at least I interpret a lot of this sort of stuff to be of that nature. But so are you saying like there was something that sort of happened in between that made you understand it more, or it clicked more to you?
It just clicked more, right. I think.
So the stories that you end up sort of telling aren't necessarily ones that have happened to you. No. But then you sort of realise that they have?
Well, it's like the same thing where, like you said earlier, people can relate to a lot of music because it's about love, and love is quite a similar thing in the terms of the way it manifests, but obviously they're different experiences, so not every person, no one has the same experience, but there's this underlying tone. So it's like, obviously I can connect with all of the songs that I write because I understand.
Sure.
But it doesn't necessarily mean some of the stories that I write aren't things that take place in my life or haven't haven't taken place in my life, which means that sometimes the realization is more there's like an underlying tone of a song that there was an emotion that you kind of suppressed, and then when you've re-listened to it, you understand maybe something from like a year ago, and you're like, oh my goodness. And by that time, you've finally processed and you've like fully cleared yourself of whatever that was, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure.
In terms of like a deep kind of thinking into it, I don't really know how to explain it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's not always like that. That's just sometimes I kind of have like a cackle and I'm like, that's so funny.
Yeah, wow, that is crazy. And I suppose like even if you are coming up with a story that isn't true to you, it's sort of you create a sort of subconscious meaning for something that is there for you anyway. You know, it sort of comes to light without you even knowing, because like a typical thought is going to be something that has stemmed from something that you already know to be true. So it sort of just ends up being something that you can sort of understand anyway. So it sort of makes sense you would come back and be like,
yeah, I've never written anything that doesn't resonate with me in terms of, but like I used to be a very observational writer. I never wrote about anything personal or anything about my life just because it wasn't what I wanted to do. It wasn't something that came out naturally.
Yeah,
just ended up gross.
I think initially for any musician that's going to be tricky, you know, to write about something that's really personal. You know, I think it's going to take time to develop yourself as a musician, as an artist. Yeah. Be comfortable on stage. Be comfortable presenting your art, your work to people.
Vulnerable.
Yeah, because then you at least have that behind you to be able to do something personal. Because like if you just start off making music that was you're just pouring your heart out into everything, and then you get put on stage, you're like, oh my god, now I have to tell everyone about this story. Dude, you know that would be terrible.
My goodness. Yeah. It's only been recently that I've been starting to write. Yeah. Actually, no, it's not even recently. It was a year ago. I forgot that the time has gone so quickly. I had an experience like that actually. I wrote it's actually one of my favorite songs, but it's super personal and it's super vulnerable. And I performed it for the first time. Actually, oh my goodness. So I wrote a little bit of it, but I hadn't figured out the rest of the lyrics yet. And I was like, oh no, like, you know, but it wasn't ready, but I wanted to do it at this performance.
Right.
And so I was just like, stuff it. So I was playing with Hannah and Levo, who play with me now, and they knew where to go with the song. We knew the structure, but I just didn't have lyrics. So when I got up on there on stage and I kind of discussed what it was about, and like after discussing what it was about, I got so shaky and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is, like it was such a, like genuinely, you can't even explain it. You just make weird sounds. Like, it was such an uncomfortable feeling because it wasn't something I had experienced before. And I wasn't sure because nerves with your vocal cords are not great combination, which means that like it was just so shaky, I feel like, at the beginning. Yeah. But because it was like a super emotional song, it worked really well. So I'm kind of happy about that. And it was so interesting. So I kind of went through the song and the words just came out. In the most,
I had a feeling that was where it was going to go.
In the most beautiful format, though, and it just that song became so much more to me than I think it ever could have been if I tried to make up the lyrics, like forcefully. And I still, even though some things didn't make some sense, so I just like tweaked a little bit, but it was just like everything else is exactly the same as it was, and it was it was pretty special, but it was super vulnerable.
It's a freaking movie, man.
Yeah, man.
That's crazy. I cannot imagine that ever happening. I hate to always try and translate things to like myself, but like
I find it so
helps
interesting.
you sort of understand. Yeah, but I can never imagine that happening for me. Like that is such a movie-esque thing. Like, do you know what it was that you said? Like, have you recorded it since then?
Yeah, it's one of the songs that I recorded. The song is it's To Fall Again. It's the song To Fall Again. And it's about, I don't want to share too much.
I was going to say, don't feel like you have to.
Not for my point, but just the safety of just the other person. Just a family member that was going through a really hard time.
Sure.
when I was growing up, and it was quite. I didn't know how to be around them because I thought that they were destructive, and I thought that they were horrible and they brought hatred, and I didn't want any of it. But by doing that, when someone is struggling mentally and emotionally, you know, this person was going through a really, really difficult time and had been exposed to very traumatic experiences. And, you know, when you shut yourself away from that, when you're one of their closest friends and family, you are increasing the problem because this person already feels not loved. And basically the song, but like coming into realization that like this does not represent who they are. Like they are such an amazing person that they're just being held down by something, and all you want for them is to just fall again, not in terms of just like release the pain and kind of come back home to a place where they can just like breathe, you know? And that was pretty much what the song was about, kind of singing about the struggles that people can have around, like dealing with people that are struggling. And, you know, I think people can be really selfish when it comes to stuff like that. They can just kind of be like, oh, you're doing this, so I'm going to be, I'm not going to like you, or, you know. And it's like the only thing you need to do is just to be there for that person. So it's kind of just a song about that, and just kind of, you know, wanting to encourage people that just don't let go of people because you're scared, you know, like it's like it'll be okay if you always just make sure that you're there. Like it's not about you, it's about them, and that's okay, you know. So that was, yeah, but that song was quite personal, obviously. But yeah, so
wow,
that was that. I literally, after like kind of briefly saying something at the beginning of that song, that I was like genuinely shaking. I was like, oh my gosh.
I haven't heard the song yet, so I'm very excited now to go and listen.
It'll be one of the last ones though. It's not out yet. I'm so
I see.
it's not out yet. I'm so excited for my music to be released, but yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And so amazing that you found that it did all come out in that moment, you know.
Yeah.
And that also just sort of proves the point about, or you know, that sort of shows natural ability too. Granted, it's such a personal thing for you, and it's all sort of ready to go, and perhaps something that was sort of never spoken about before.
Yeah.
So I mean, I suppose you can sort of understand how it would really come out at that time, but you know, there's one thing to talk about it openly with someone, to discuss it in a format sort of like this, you know, to actually talk about a situation, but to be on stage and like sing it. Like, and make it fit and work. Like, that's crazy.
It is. It's
what is that? What is that
ridiculous.
feeling like? Did it sort of just?
It's like shock, to be honest.
You're just in a different state.
Like shock. Yeah. It definitely. You really have to, because like for me in performing, I've never really kind of, you know how some people are such emotional performers. I applaud them, but that's just really not me, if that makes sense. But for that moment and to make that song what I want it to be, I really just had to like dive right in to what I was feeling so the words would come out. And that was quite challenging. And it was like, especially in front of like a room full of people, you're like, oh, is this thing to be doing right now? Probably not. Will I cry? Maybe. Do I want to? Definitely not. But, you know, and I was just in complete shock, and I just kind of like had to breathe, get a beer, and just get some fresh air, to be honest.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have been there for that, but I suppose no one would have really known that was the case if you were watching. Yeah, it would have just been on stage.
No. However, I've played with the microphone so much.
As like, in, like, fiddled with it?
Fiddled with it so much. Just
during the performance?
Just the whole time, yep.
I mean, I suppose you've got to do something like that to keep yourself on the straight and narrow.
Yeah,
that's exactly it. That's crazy. Do you find yourself doing any fidgety sort of things? Like, is that common for you to be a fidgeter?
I'm a fidgeter. Always have been, though.
In terms of like creating and stuff, do you find you sort of have to have, like, if you're singing, are you like hands are free?
I've got to figure out what to do with my hands because I'm not playing the guitar anymore.
Yeah.
Which means, well, I do, but not really for performing anymore. and I just don't know what to do. And now the microphone's become what I play with.
Yeah, sure.
Which is not good. But
I suppose though, like you often see that people that are just in front of the microphone, they're not playing anything else. It's either hands on the mic,
yeah,
or it's hands like behind the back, or
Oh,
like
yeah.
hands out to the side, like explaining the song there as well. So it kind of makes sense. You would end up grabbing it. It's
Just,
there in
yeah.
front of you, especially
Yeah.
when you've got people in front of you.
Yeah.
It's easier to sort of go.
Just fiddle around, be like,
you don't
oh,
want to have
yeah.
your hands in your pockets either. Cause
No.
But yeah,
But yeah, I definitely do the hands behind the back a wee bit. But I want to get out of that habit.
yeah,
Because I don't just want to look like I'm not enjoying myself. And I
Yeah,
feel like
for sure.
sometimes it can look like that.
yeah. And I guess most of that I think is shown through the performance. Like I don't think. And depends on the song too. You're probably going to change
definitely.
that depending on the mood of the song.
Yeah, definitely.
Because that's just how it plays out. If it's a dancier song, you might find
Yeah.
you end up sort of like moving your hands
Oh,
around
yeah,
anyway.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so cool. Man, that's so crazy. You this has been really fun. Like you really have a deep insight into everything, into your process and that. That's just really cool to hear because not a lot of people really sort of understand what it is that they're doing.
Yeah.
It seems like you're pretty on a pretty.
It took a long time.
Yeah.
It took a long time. to be able to figure it
roughly how long have you really been doing music for? Like,
out. Properly for the
Pre-study, yeah.
last 3 years.
so during your study, you really got
Yeah.
into it properly.
Yeah. In terms of writing and in terms of performing, definitely the last 3.5 years.
It's pretty
Yeah.
quick, really. Like considering what your abilities actually are, like it's crazy to think.
Yeah, but I guess like I've done it for my whole life pretty much.
Sure.
I hate when people say that because it's such a cliche. But it's like I was brought up in a musical family, so it was very it was just what was known.
Yeah.
You know?
I like that though. I like that there's a story. I like when people have a story. Everyone likes a story. Everyone likes a
Yeah,
come up story,
I
you know.
know.
And that is just true to you. That is
Yeah,
part of
it's
your
just-
life, and
yeah.
it's an easy thing to sort of
Yeah.
put the two and two together.
Yeah, so it's
I've-
always been there.
Yeah, that's great. I mean that it's like it was meant to be, you know.
Yeah.
I haven't really got anything like that I've been doing since I was younger. So anything that I'm sort of dabbling in now, have done, hasn't really stemmed from anything. So
Yeah.
I would just admire people that really have stuck with things because I lose interest in stuff so quickly that I just never find myself coming
Yeah.
back to anything, sticking with anything.
Yeah.
So to be honest, most of the people that I know that are extremely talented in what they do and persistent in what they do have been doing it all their life. Yet there's been something that started somewhere from an early
Yeah.
age and that sort of stuck with them. And I think that's just a crazy thing.
I
And
always-
it seems natural
Yeah.
and how it should be, but it's just foreign to me.
I always think that there's a connection though. Like I feel like, I don't know if you feel like there's potentially some connection you can make from what you're doing now with these podcasts to like when you're younger or what you're up to or the way you even talk to people or your feeling when you spoke to people as well, because that has a huge indicator.
Definitely.
On-
I think, I don't know how the podcast thing sort of stemmed, to be honest, because I've always thought of myself, I think in different environments, I'm quite a different person. I think I typically was always reasonably outgoing.
Yeah.
But then sort of in later teen years, typically most people sort of go through a phase of just being a wee bit lost and a wee
Yeah.
bit funny. And I think
100%.
I was a wee bit like that and would have classed myself at the time to be a bit of a, what do you call, an introvert.
Introvert. Yeah.
And so, honestly, this podcast scares the shit out of me. Like doing this really scares me.
Wow.
I'm getting better at it, but
Yeah.
it is quite a daunting thing, really.
Yeah.
Because you and I haven't really spoken at all.
No.
And here we are, an hour in. Like it's crazy. So I'm sort of discovering things about myself that I guess perhaps were always there. Mm-hmm. So the beauty of this is that I am sort of going, oh, wow, I can do this or I can do
Yeah.
that, not thinking that I would. So I think the reason why I'm sticking with it is because it is good for me.
Yeah.
And it is something that, because it scares me, I feel like I should do it. you
Yeah.
know, because I'm reaping benefits from
100%.
it. Other
Yeah.
people are reaping benefits from it.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, this is really working out in a good way.
Yeah.
I still get really nervous and scared about it, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's just part of it, right? And most people can talk if you get
Most
them talking.
people can talk if
you
you
know?
get them talking. Yep,
Yeah,
that's
and,
true.
And I know. I don't know how people feel about talking about themselves. Like, you're obviously sort of thriving in this environment, from what I can tell. Like, you obviously have a lot to say, which is great, and that's what I want.
Yeah, I think a lot.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, what is your outlook, I suppose, for this year? Like, I know we're talking about expectations for where your music's sort of heading and stuff, and whether to avoid that or not. But how do you see the year sort of panning out? Like, sort of theoretically, I guess, what do you want to be able to achieve?
I haven't actually given it that much thought yet. I'm kind of...
Probably a good thing.
Yeah, I think that is. Or else I'm probably not going to get a lot done.
Yeah.
I'm kind of just doing things step by step.
Cool.
Like, I've got a single coming out soon. And that's my main priority. And then and I've got a couple of things that kind of involve that. And that's the project that I'm working on at the moment. And I'm aware of other things that will be coming up, but I'm not putting any strain on them.
Sure.
Because I think it's good to just be patient, because like we said earlier, that if you set your life in an expectation of what should happen, it won't happen. You've got to be flexible.
Definitely.
So I'm just trying to keep that in mind and not get too overwhelmed with trying to do things. This year I just want to I want to establish myself as a musician, first off, online, just because I've done a lot of performances and that's been awesome. But online, I want to really push that. Obviously, push my music out and just collaborate with creative people and just kind of dance in the fun of it, you know? Just
Definitely. I think that's a great time to do it. And let's just hope that 2021 doesn't pan out the same way that 2020 did.
Yeah.
And we still are able to do all the things that we want to do.
Yeah.
We obviously have to be super grateful for the position that we're in. So hopefully that carries on and you can sort of end up doing those things you want to do.
Yeah.
Because, that's what
hey,
you can hope for,
2022,
right?
I'll be there too.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Hey, look, this has been really fun, Judy. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Great insight into your process. This was really fun. I really enjoyed this one. So thanks again.
No worries, thanks.
Bye, everyone.